Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to What is Fabrizio Streaming. I'm not inking, probably not drawing, barely thinking. Yeah, I'm trying something a little different today. Let's get some background music. I'm going to take a look at some comics. I never do this. And I was finishing up this Dylan Dog issue 2, and I really wanted to talk about it. It's a new comic, so generally I'm sort of like in old comic space. Thinking about old comics, looking at old comics. So I really wanted to, grab 2 books, kind of compare them, contrast them, take a look, and see if I have any thoughts that are worth thinking, articulating. One of those things. Hope everybody's having a good Sunday. It's funny because right before I started to stream, I'm always doing something. I'm never doing anything related to what I'm about to stream. I was just looking up sleeping bags that will save you in an apocalypse. They fit in your pocket, and I'm like, I am sold. I need 5 of those. I didn't order any though, but I will. Yeah, so that's kind of where my head's at. Apocalypse and some comic art. This is an open stream, so if you want to jump on, let me know. Just pop in. You don't have to show anything, but if you just want to occasionally tell a joke, maybe hum a fine tune, that works too. Oh, man. So before I jump in, I will just let everybody know I have a comic book, Horace H. Hoover. I'm the sole creator. And issues 1, 2, and 3 are out, available on HoraceHoover.com. It's like an occult mystery, and it's basically 1 to 2 stories over the 5 issues, but he investigates paranormal, supernatural, ghost story stuff, occult things. So check it out. Hey, Cigar Gangster, how's it going? Preparing for the upcoming hurricane this Wednesday. I am well out of hurricane areas, but I just mean in general. Outside of hurricane, I'm like, I just feel like I'm going to need to sleep outside, and not in a camping kind of way, in a forced way, in a Red Dawn kind of way. Yeah, the hurricane stuff is pretty crazy. Can't imagine, never had anything like that, in my area. Don't really get tornadoes. Occasionally we get tornadoes. Definitely a little bit of flooding, I would say, if anything, but nothing really devastating like in the South that they get. So hopefully everybody gets the supplies and the help they need from the people that will provide them. I will be non-specific as to who those people are, because we know that some people can't. The government usually drops the ball on this kind of thing. But anyway, outside of that, yeah, so I'm going to talk comics today. I don't do this. This is a new thing. Usually I'm just focused on my art, because I don't know if anybody wants to hear me talk about other comics. But like I said, I have been reading new stuff and old stuff all the time, so I figured I would kind of dig into it. And this isn't going to be a review of the story or anything like that. I don't really want to do a review. I'll give my thoughts on them for sure, but I kind of want to look at the art and the storytelling and really dig into the different techniques used, obviously at different times. We have the Creeper from Ditko, and we have Dylan Dog, and with a list of people that I don't know that created that. So I figured I'd just take a look at them. If anybody has any questions, comments, let me know, but I'll dig in. Cigar Gangster, looking forward to the next installment of HHH. Thank you. I am currently working on issue 4. I'm penciling page 22. The book's a little longer. It's like 36 pages. So it's going to take me a little more time, but I'm cracking away at it. And it's definitely the best book so far. Every book I do, I think I progress across the board: writing, storytelling, art, all of that. So I'm really excited about issue 4, but it's taking some time because I really want to stick the landing for this story. Hey Marcus, how's it going? Hope you're having a good day. So we'll start off with Batman and Dylan Dog. So I'm familiar with Dylan Dog. I love Dylan Dog. It's an Italian comic, goes way back. You know what? I don't know like the history of this stuff, so please don't quote me on this. I'll look it up now though. I don't know when it started. 1986, which sounds about right. I remember as a kid seeing it. I picked it up. I can't remember the first time I ever picked it up. But he became sort of absorbed into the DC universe, I guess. I don't know how that works or when that happened, but it was very cool because I love Dylan Dog. He's sort of like an occult investigator. So there's not many of those, right? There's Hellboy, Dylan Dog, Constantine, probably other ones I'm unfamiliar with, but he's probably my favorite, I think. So I'll start off with the art here. Across the board, I really love the art for this Dylan Dog. The colors are great. You know, we have these really great yellows, oranges, reds. The structure, the storytelling, it's all very good. I do have a few things that I think are maybe some issues with the book. Again, it's a great book. I highly recommend it. It's I don't know how many pages this thing is. It's got to be 50 or 60 pages. So I think it's worth it. It was $5. It's really nice. And so overall, highly recommend it. I've just read the first 2 issues, but they're good. They're really good. The art's great, and like I said, I love Dylan Dog. Hey Sasquatch Geddes, how's it going? Glad I made it to the stream, especially your topic today. Cool. Yeah, again, I don't do this, so hopefully I have something to share. But when you're going through a book, things pop up, and you kind of like make mental notes of them. So I'm like, you know what? I have a few things to share with this, and I like the idea of taking an old comic and a new comic and kind of contrasting, comparing. So that might be a thing. We'll see. So again, the coloring, and let me look at the credits here. Roberto Recchioni, story and script. Gigi Cavenago, and some other Werther del. I can't pronounce these names. Giovanna Nero, Pat Brousseau, Gigi Cavenago, Katie Kubert, and that's it. The usual suspects. So I don't really know any of these names. That doesn't mean much. I don't really pay attention to new stuff that often enough where I would recognize it. But I would say that off the bat, the coloring is it's stark and it's saturated, and it really relates to the storytelling. So that's actually something that I love. I try to do that with my comic with a limited color palette, but depending on where they're at, the mood, the atmosphere, the subject matter, I modify the color palette to essentially mimic that. So like right off the bat, you get this yellow, blue. I mean, it's like a rainbow almost, and you get the red of the, of the brake lights. And you can tell right away that this is really well drawn. I mean, these buildings, the perspective is really nice. And it's not lacking for any details. There's a lot of details. It really feels like a city. A city with an architectural bent. So there is planning to the city. It's not here is generic city, randomly generated buildings. So I don't know if that's a reference photo or not, but really well done. Again, the structure of everything is great. We have facial expressions, which work, the interior lighting, which is red as opposed to the blue. Some people might find it a little jarring between going between all those colors all the time, but I like it, so I have no problem with it. Again, the Batmobile, all of this kind of stuff is really well done. This is a digital artist, which is a bit of a shock for me. I generally don't like digital artists, but this really works well. The one thing I will notice is it's a very tonal. So there's not a ton of line work. Like, this is a good example. Like his face, there's not a bunch of hatching, cross hatching. It's just a big block for the nose, for the shadow, the cheek, the hair. So it's heavy on the contrast, not a lot of line work, but it works well. Dylan Dog has a red shirt, and that really like sets him apart outside the hairstyle or whatever. And it just goes to show that sometimes that's all you need. Whenever I was doing Horace H. Hoover, he's wearing a blue suit, which isn't odd. There's nothing really special about the suit. He's wearing a red vacuum cleaner on his head. So sometimes you just need one color to essentially pull your character out of the crowd. And for Dylan Dog, it's literally just a red shirt, which is just something to keep in mind whenever you're designing characters and doing your own comic. You might not need to go as crazy as you think. It's kind of the Scooby-Doo, where, they have slight variations in costumes and hairstyle, but they're still humans, right? They're not superheroes, but the colors kind of lend themselves to that styling. So I'm not going to go page to page, but this is a good example of what I wanted to talk about. The biggest difference and the biggest thing that I noticed is really I kind of hate the term decompressed storytelling, and I'm going to take a cup of coffee to really make that point. I'm just not a fan of the term decompressed storytelling. I think it's not very accurate. But for lack of a better term at this exact moment, we'll say this is decompressed. We have 3 panels on one page, and then we have 4 panels on this page. If we just add up the copy, there's virtually no copy, right? There's no dialogue. There's really not much to fit. Like when you're drawing a page and you're laying out characters and they're, going back and forth, things are happening. The biggest impediment is going to be space for dialogue. That's always generally, that's where you run into sort of a ceiling. But that's not the case here at all. And as far as what's going on in these 2 pages, if I was sort of to reverse engineer this into a script, it would be, Batman in the Batwing, and then this page is Batman and Dylan Dog essentially walk through an abandoned building. You really could reduce this to 1 page. You wouldn't want it on 1 page because it's 2 different scenes, but all things being the same, you don't need 2 pages and all of these panels to have this much copy and to do this much sort of action. So that by far is the biggest difference. And again, I'm not a fan of deep compressed storytelling. Why am I not a fan of decompressed storytelling? Let me think about that. Is it Tim Hortons coffee? It is not Tim Hortons coffee. What is it? So I actually buy coffee and then I put it in these little tins, these glass or plastic tins. It's probably Dunkin'. I don't know if I can tell by the taste. Probably Dunkin'. Now here's the other thing too. So, and this happens throughout. This is one of the big things in the comic book. There's a lot of Well, here's another perfect example. We have a whole page. Now, don't get me wrong, the art is really well done. This is great composition. I love that. I love this. It's all really well done. But I think this 55-page book could be 30 pages. It's really well done. The art is beautiful. The coloring, everything about it is beautiful, but it really takes far more steps than it's necessary to tell a story. Is that inherently bad? It's definitely different. And I keep thinking about it. Why is it different? I'll get to the Creeper in a few minutes here, but one of the things that the Creeper and sort of older books, and I think mine including, is that when you're reading copy and dialogue and narration and thought balloons, it makes you stop on the page and spend time with that art. With this, you're literally, even though the art is fantastic, you're flipping through it. It takes instead of a second a panel, we're talking like a second a page. It really, and this is another page I want to go over here in a second. It really, you're just flying through the book, regardless of how many pages it is. It doesn't feel like you spent time there at any particular location. It's almost like when you're watching a movie and they're just rushing through everything, and you get to the end of the movie and you're like, I just felt like I was rushed the whole time. I have to think about, okay, what happened? Why did it happen? Why'd they do this? Let's see here. Reza Draw Studio. Hey, how's it going? Thanks for popping in. I appreciate it. Hey, how to details rendering? How to render details, maybe? I mean, as far as this book is concerned, there's not a lot of what I would call details. You have large shapes and you have some shadow, but you don't have much more than that. And I think that's why they can do 60 pages for a book instead of 30. I can see this going very quickly. It's loose. It's well done. The structure is there. But this is a good example. So this page here, let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11 panels, which is great. I'm like, okay, so we're at 11 panels here, but they're so abstracted that it doesn't have the impact. Foot, face, foot, face. Okay, he kicked him, but I don't really see it happening. There's just not, it's almost abstracted. So even in an area where you would sort of slow down and be forced to spend time with a page, you're not. You're skipping along basically. And here's another example of it. Again, don't get me wrong, the art is fantastic. So these are great compositions. This is really well done. It's just an approach of modern versus old school. I don't know what we want to call that. And again, I'm not a fan of decompressed. Decompressed makes it sound like, okay, it was one issue and I'm going to turn it into 3 issues. I really don't think that's the case. I think it's just people are different. They have different reading abilities now. Like, to be completely honest, for somebody to sit down and watch a 2-hour movie, some people will do it, but there's a lot of people that won't even do that anymore. They won't sit down for 2 hours and watch a movie. They'll watch 15 minutes at a time, 10 minutes at a time. So I think culturally, just across the board, we really have shifted our ability to sit, focus, and concentrate on something for an extended period of time, even for a comic book, let alone a novel or something like that. Marcus, yeah, this is a really fast read. Yeah, and it is unfortunate, because at the end of this book, I really feel like it checked all the boxes. Again, art, characters, I like the dialogue, the dialogue that was there. but then it feels like it went by too fast, and I won't remember it a month or two from now. And if you quizzed me about this book and I wouldn't know what actually happened, I might be able to remember, okay, well, Groucho got infected with, Joker's smiling potion, gas, whatever. But that's about it, Whereas some comics, I can recreate panels in my head, and panels and pages and scenes. And so, Marcus, but that's not a good fight scene. The action and reaction should really be in the same panel. Yeah, it's abstracted. It's an abstract fight, really. We know fighting is going on, but we don't really know. So I would never do that. Like I'm working on a fight scene right now, and choreographing this thing has been brutal. It's been brutal. But I finally made my way through it. But it took 6 versions of thumbnails to get that choreograph right, where it wasn't foot in stomach, face, getting punched. But even that's okay to some degree. Okay, so again, this is really well done. I mean, the art is no complaints whatsoever. It's such a fast read that things go by so quickly. You can go back, and we all do it, right? We read the book first, and then you go back and you look at the art, and then maybe you'll reread it again and stop and look at the art, because that first read through is, I'm trying to get through the story. I think it would be really rare if you were reading a comic for the first time and you stopped on a page and just stared at it for 5 minutes. I think that would be really awkward and weird. Maybe for 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, depending on the page. But I can't imagine you would do that for, minutes and minutes at a time if it was the first read through. At least that's me. That's how I read comics. In the comments, let me know how crazy I am on that one. Again, a really great use of the palette and the location. I try to do that. My palette's much more limited, so I really can't do all of these things, which makes me a little bummed. I think maybe in the future, whatever projects I do, I might take a different approach with the coloring and not limit myself completely. I might give myself a little more leg room for that, because you have this reds and purples in here, and then they go outside and we have the yellows and greens, which is... So in this book, spoiler, I don't know when this came out, we do meet Constantine. But man, look at that. That's a whole page, and there's really not much dialogue. He answers the door. There's no action, so it's really just dialogue. I just feel like you could have done that. Done a much better job of getting that told much more quickly. So they talk. And again, this isn't a critique or review of the book. I just want to look at the art, see how they do things. This is a pretty good example of how little detail. You get the form. It's almost like a JRJR kind of thing. The later years, we'll call them. There's really not much detail. Does he really nail the structure? Not necessarily on that one, but we still get it. So it works well enough. So this is one thing I really wanted to point out that we're going to look at on the Creeper. Marcus, the comic seems like a talking head book with not much talking. Yeah. I mean, again, it was a long book. I'm more okay with talking heads than other people will be. Just because it depends on the book. If I did a graphic novel about Sherlock Holmes, I would expect a lot of talking heads. Virtually everybody is a talking head. So I'm okay with that. I think it depends on the book. And this is a Batman book, but it's not really. It's a Dylan Dog book. So even for Dylan Dog, it might be a little light on the action, but it's okay because it's investigation. It's doing research and finding things out and understanding things. So I'm okay with that, just based on the type of book it is. I'll be honest, I don't really know Constantine very well, so I can't really speak to that. I know Dylan Dog really well, and it's pretty in line with his standard stuff. They're in bookshops, and this is another surprise. So we go from got this glowing red into the yellow and green, and one of my favorite characters is the demon. And that was completely unexpected, because there's really nothing on the cover well, no, there is. It's totally there. Huh. I missed it. But yeah, so the demon's in this. I'm like, wow, that was a treat for me. I love the demon. Like, these are really well done. They're loose, they're digital, but they're really well done. Oh, I'm sorry. The clothing. Let's look at the clothing. So if I had to pick one thing that artists did really well, and not to point fingers at anybody, but really the Jim Lee era was the end of good clothing for the most part. And by that I mean folds became abstract. And I'm going to jump over to the creeper here in a second, but if we look at this as an example, these aren't descriptive folds. They're abstract. They essentially take the place. They're shorthand for clothing and folds, but it doesn't feel like this, like, especially around the stomach. Those are just lines, right? Those are just lines. And one of my biggest pet peeves, again, is clothing. I think at a certain point, I don't know what happened, but people stopped drawing clothing and folds correctly. Now, there's a bunch of videos online about the kinds of folds, compression folds, and blah, blah, blah. There's a million of those things out there. But the one thing that, I think of Buscema, he was great at folds. Steve Ditko, especially in The Creeper, is a master at folds, because there's so many suits in this book. He's truly a master at, like, a three-dimensionality to the folds, and they actually feel like fabric instead of, okay, I have an arm, the arm is bending, and I'm just going to put some lines that are all sort of radiating out of the, where the arm bends, which you're never really going to get a good look for that. It's shorthand, it's quote unquote comic book language, but it's not going to look naturalistic. And for me, naturalism is the ultimate goal for that. So I'm going to take a second here and have a drink, because my throat's something. Oh, man. Yeah, so I do like the coloring. The coloring is sort of was a nice surprise, and I think I will reference this in the future for some other projects. Digital coloring is really the only way to color. I've seen some people talk about using dyes and stuff like that, and I think they're confused about how coloring used to happen. The dyes were just essentially to let the printing know what colors to use, but it wasn't the actual, that wasn't the effect, right? So I have seen that, and I kind of chuckle at it. So digital, I think, is the best way to actually recreate as close to as we can old school comic books. And you'll, like, the Creeper, like with this bright yellow, on this bright white paper, it's definitely not what somebody would expect to see. I do have the floppies for some of this book, but not all of them. Oh, man. Alrighty, so that was phase 1, we'll say. Okay, so this is the Creeper. If anybody's not familiar with it, DC character, Steve Ditko. I do not know how many issues. Is it like 12? I don't know. I don't know how many issues total. Yeah, I think he does the art on most of these books. There's a few where he doesn't, though. And you can tell. So, one of the reasons I wanted to bring the Creeper, outside of the fact that I love it, is that you get like that really stark color palette too. You get yellow and red and green, very, in a way similar to this, but in a way very, very different. That's computer colors. There's not gradients on that, but there's a lot of variation. So they don't just get one color orange. There's an infinite color of versions of orange that they can use. Yeah, so you get this yellow, red, and green character who just sticks out so much. It's fantastic. Again, one of my favorite characters. As far as the books and the storytelling, I thought it was really fun. It was different than what I thought. I'd always seen the Creeper, and he popped up a few times, but I had never actually gone and read the original books. But they're really fun. I had no idea he's sort of play acting crazy, or some of the language he uses almost. And this was a costume that he used as a disguise, and then basically it becomes real, and that becomes his costume. And he presses a button, and it sort of just appears and disappears. So the clothing is one of the biggest things I wanted to point out. So since there's a lot of suits everywhere, right? Okay, this is a great example right here. Look at this rendering of that suit, or that coat. This truly is fantastic. It feels like actual folds. It feels like the folds, first of all, make sense, but how do I put this? Whenever you're working in folds, and this happens in sculpture too, is you have a tendency to either allow for more fabric than is actually possible, or less. And this feels like the proper amount of fabric. So if it's pulling from here and buckling there and pulling from here, if you straightened it all out, it would feel like the proper amount of material. And I know that's kind of nitpicky or whatever, but maybe it's more in sculpture that it's really noticeable. But this is just so well done. Most people, this part right here is so fantastic. This, from the knee to the bottom, you get like a crease, the front of the pants. And most people just forget about it, but he always uses that to show motion. So let me just grab something else. It's just so well done. And he does it on every single panel. He does not, let me zoom into that. He really doesn't skimp at all. That's not right. There we go. Yeah, so if you look at this panel right here, he always takes into account that extra material and the shape of it and the direction of it. It's really, really incredible. And I could go on for days about Ditko's folds, but they're just so well done. Right here, this is accurate. This is as accurate as anything I've ever seen. Like how this kind of goes in, goes out, kind of crinkles up. That looks like it comes out. Whereas this is just abstract. It's kind of formless. It's just lines, really. Again, I like it. It's a different style. It's a different thing. But then when I look at these old Creeper books, I can't help but feel like, if we could, because that's a foundational thing, right? Like fabric is a foundational concept. It's like perspective and anatomy and contrast and foreshortening. But somewhere along the line, it just completely got left behind as an unnecessary skill, amongst other things. This is another great one. Like, this is the way your pants kind of break there on the shoe. I mean, it's so good. Like, Ditko, it's too good. Like, his arm here, those shapes, you can absolutely see how it goes over the arm. Now, as far as this, the other thing I wanted to look at here is number of panels. Oh, hey, I have a guest.
Hey,
hello, John.
How's everything?
How's it going?
I was just sleeping because I stayed up till 5 o'clock in the morning, and then I woke up at 9, and I just woke up.
Holy cow!
Yeah, I'm a slob.
That's all right.
Oh, we're looking at Creeper. Cool.
Yeah, I was looking at something new and something old. So this is a new Batman Dylan Dog book, and I was kind of just comparing, contrasting some of the artwork between that and the Creeper. Yeah, so what I was actually talking about is clothing and how well people used to draw folds, and it really is like a lost art now. Like, if you look at that, it's so well done.
Yeah.
Like, it goes around the character. It's got 3-dimensional, like, if you feels like round. I don't know what happened, but after, I feel like it was the Jim Lee era, maybe, where that got lost and it started to become just lines that they put. But like, yeah, that's absolutely how
it's almost like people have body paint on these days.
Yeah, and they're just essentially, they radiate, and they're radiating from like a section, but they're just lines. But like, look at that. That is how pants actually fold. Like, if you have your hands in your pocket.
Yeah.
So good.
We all got to get purple pants again.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So how's it going? I mean, I'm pretty much done here. What do you think of the Creeper? Are you a fan?
I don't know much about him. He's like my least known Steve Ditko creation. I bought a copy of Creeper #1. It's right over here in this stack of comics to read. I should pull it out and talk about it. But that's not his first appearance. His first appearance is what, DC Showcase or something?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what I have. I have some floppies, but this was, I think, the first 12.
Yeah, so if that starts at the beginning, that'll probably have
the Showcase. Yeah, so this has the Showcase. That's classic.
That's the first appearance. What is that?
Yeah.
Does it say
Showcase,
the number?
73.
73. Okay. Hey, Brian's in the chat too. I was just reading Brian's comments.
Hey, Brian, how's it going?
Hey, Marcus.
Will Eisner paid a lot of attention to drawing folds using different lines for different fabrics. Yeah, he was absolutely a master at that. I just feel like it's such a lost art.
I have a kind of like a Steve Ditko tribute character that I want to introduce in Heroic Tales, and that's one thing I want to have it like folded. Like the character's going to be like a slob, so he wears like a fedora and jacket, but it's like he keeps it crumpled up in the corner. You know what I mean? So I want it to be really dirty and everything. But
yeah, I think
that purple hat, green ties. That's awesome. People don't dress.
Yeah, you know what the other thing too is I noticed about this. Not that this needs to be a Ditko thing because I know people know Ditko, but there's specific things in here. Since the creeper, he's not, he's not the in his costume the whole time. He really goes out of his way to make the his alter ego interesting. Like that hand is an interesting looking hand, even if it's slightly awkward. You know what I mean? It's interesting to look at, and that pose, with the foreshortening. So he does that in a bunch of places.
In the background, go back to that. Just look at that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just flexing in like everything all at once. A marionette.
Yeah, he really goes like his hands here. So like he knows that, even if you don't have a giant yellow, red, and green character, you can still do some cool stuff with people in suits that, that make it interesting.
Like, what is it? Does he have powers to get the creeper?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. So he heals. Wow, does he do anything other than healing? Marcus knows this, even though I read this. What does he do? He heals. He's scaling here, huh?
And if I remember, he's like a TV news broadcaster.
Yep.
Yeah, what's his name? Like Jack Ryder.
Jack Ryder. Yep.
Yeah, Jack Ryder. That's and the creeper. It's like that's such a.
Oh man, you're breaking up a bit. I don't know if that's me or not.
That's such a Ditko thing. For Spider and all the Ditko characters to be like, oh.
Yeah, your robot voicing here. Let me. Sorry. Am I distorted at all?
No, it's probably me.
Well, maybe it'll give it a minute, Wi-Fi and stuff. Hey, Brian, all the old classic comic artists were masters of drawing natural clothing, drapery folds. They used to teach this stuff in art schools. Yeah, I mean, and it's like until you see it again, you're like, damn it, we lost that. Sasquatch Geddes. Hey, guys, any time to answer create your own comics? Any time to answer creator-owned comics? Sure. Yeah. Love your art and channel, Brian. That's cool. The creeper has super strength, healing factor, and agility. Yeah, he's just kind of scary and creepy. He puts on his like laughing. He starts laughing before he jumps into a scene or something like that, which I think is funny. He's like if the Joker was just cosplaying,
He's like a superhero Joker, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not real. So like the laughing, like he's cosplaying the Joker basically. So he's not really crazy or creepy. He's like, all right, I gotta amp up the weirdness to scare these guys. So the other thing too is with these like reprints, obviously this isn't news. Well, it's not newsprint. It's better than newsprint. So it is bright white. So this yellow is really yellow. And red and green. So it definitely has a different feel than it would if it was like on a muted newsprint.
Just see, I think I have it right here. The creeper. See if I can.
Sasquatch Geddes. Sweet. I've decided to finish my entire comic first. How do I decide to self-publish, kickstart, or shop it around? Oh man, that's a good question. So I'll give my thoughts on that. Definitely a good idea to finish it first. I'm a little. It's depending on how much time you have. Obviously, if you have a lot of free time and you can market a bunch and create it, that's one thing. I was really limited in my time, so I try to focus on finishing it right now and then sort of doing a marketing push after. The other thing too is once you finish your first comic, you can kind of get some feedback from people, And hopefully that'll help you to, if you need to fix anything, or at minimum, maybe it'll give you some ideas on how to market or where to market it. So, if you think, I don't know, I don't know what your book's about, but if you give it to somebody and they're like, oh, it's a cool horror book, and you're like, well, I really wasn't going for horror or something like that. You can adjust accordingly. As far as self-published, Kickstarter, or shop it around, I have, when I was with Alterna, obviously we did crowdfunding. I'm self-publishing, but you need a store for that, and it's a bit more setup, I think, in the beginning. My next book will be crowdfunded, so I'm trying everything to see what happens and see what works best, and maybe I'll kind of bounce back and forth, for each one. What do you think, John?
I crowdfunded because, like I said, I paid for every. I wrote the comic, so I paid for an artist. I paid for everything else out of pocket, and then I crowdfunded. I also had an online presence for a couple of years beforehand. I was talking to people, so I kind of made a name for myself, and then crowdfunded. I think if I was to just make a comic book and nobody knew who I was, I think I wouldn't have done anywhere near as well as I did. So,
yeah,
I know people say, like, make a name for yourself, and then what do? Do you want to be a YouTuber who makes comic books, or do you want to, you know what I mean? So it's really tough. I don't know. I would love to shop around my comic, but I couldn't do it monthly.
Yeah.
So so this works for me, but everybody else is different.
Yeah, that's the struggle. It's like, are we YouTubers or comic creators? And
right.
I'm doing this. I do this once a week on Sundays because I like it, and it's a chance to chat with people. But I just don't have time to do it any more than that. And obviously, it shows. I don't have that many subscribers, so yeah, man, but it's true. Like, once you get a YouTube channel and people know you, and they can, really know the kind of stuff you might do, it's a lot easier to sell them something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did a YouTube channel just because during COVID, I was like bored out of my mind and I wanted to talk about comics. And it wasn't until I started seeing other people make comics, like, wow. So it's not like I had a long-term plans. I'm like, I'm going to talk to people, hit a certain number, make it a comic, kind of came out of the way, But I don't know. If I just want to make a comic book, what do I do? Geez, I don't know. That's tough, Like, I guess you guys have a good advantage in that you don't have to lay out a lot of money hiring artists and colorists and letterers.
Yeah.
I have no artistic ability whatsoever. So I would just make the comic and then see if you could come on other people's shows and show it off, and that's what I would do.
Yeah, yeah, like you were saying, your intent wasn't to, like, sell the comic. It just happened organically. I do feel like that might be the way to go too. Like, try some things and see what feels right for you, because there's some of us that really, like, I don't think I would be good at interviewing people, so I don't. So, you got to kind of find out what works for you and kind of know your limitations, I think.
Yeah, and like, or make like 5-minute videos if you're good at editing, because a lot of people that I talk to afterwards or beforehand, they're like, I hate doing this. I just want to make a comic book. I don't want to do the talk show circuit and things like that. So, like, I don't know, maybe make a channel where you make like a 5-minute video, edit it, you get 40,000 views, and then put a little comic at the end of it.
Yeah, just make sure you put a title that says Disney Panics, and you'll get 20,000 views, and then
they hate you. and then show a new Star Wars.
I did throw John's link to his campaign. Check it out. It's Heroic Tales. And I'm looking for Brian's pre-launch. I'll find that in a second here. Yeah, it all depends. I mean, I think even people that have been doing it for a long time, they're constantly reevaluating, what platforms, what works, what doesn't. Do we add toys, or, is it too much? Or am I changing the price? So I honestly feel like there's not a right answer, and that's sort of a terrible answer as well. But yeah, nobody has it completely solved, I don't think.
No, you're going to ask 10 people, you're going to get 10 completely different answers.
Yeah. Oh, and you're actually, John, you're doing a series. Is it called Kickstart 101 or crowdfund?
Yeah, it's an irregular series because I met this guy, Edward Lilly. He is super talented, and he made a comic all by himself. Every aspect of the comic he made by himself, and it is gorgeous. And then he sold like 80 copies. And he's like, what do I do? He's hit, and it wasn't until RJ from the Fourth Age just happened to stumble across his art and invited him, and then that's how we do that comic book team up, RJ and I. He was and I was like floored by this guy, and I was just like, why is this in a perfect world? This guy would be like Disney and Marvel would be bidding for this guy. He's so freaking talented; he could do everything. So he was like, "What is crowdfunding?" Like he didn't know any of it. Most normal people don't know about Kickstarter and crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Like I keep saying, I'm a construction worker, guys. When I was telling people about my comic book, they were like, "What is this crowdfunding stuff?" Like, "Oh, you mean I give you money, and then like 6 months later you might make the comic book? Here's $10. Just give me a comic book." Well, then come back when you got it. I mean, they grasp it. I didn't realize until then about how weird it is. So
you're breaking up again, man.
Can you hear me now?
You're doing the robot voice. Darn it.
I got once the comic comes out, just people physically. Any good?
No. Darn it. Let me I don't know. Let me remove you and just add you back. Maybe that'll do something.
Hello?
No. Doing the robot voice. Darn it. He can pop back in. Hopefully that'll fix that. I posted the link for John's Heroic Tales and Brian Baugh's pre-launch for issue 13 on Kickstarter. Check it out. You couldn't ask for a better Halloween themed, seasonal book. So check it out. And the series is great. I can't recommend it enough. Yeah, I hope that helped, Sasquatch Geddies. Oh, sorry, I missed a few. Brian Baugh. My advice would be make a finished comic first, then worry about how to get it published. Just finishing a comic can be a big enough challenge by itself. Yeah. That is what I did. Let's see. John's back here.
I just booted myself and rebooted. So is it better?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Brian was saying that it's hard enough to get a book done, let alone, shop it around and get it published. So like if you get to that point, you will feel pretty good, I think. And you'll feel confident at what you have to shop it around, whether it's crowdfunding or getting published or something like that.
Yeah,
oh, man.
Can't wait for the new Wolf and Batsy. Me too.
Yeah. I love Halloween. I mean, this is obviously my favorite season of the entire year. Well, I love Christmas too.
Yeah.
But
Halloween and Christmas is my favorite time of the year.
Yes. I love it so much. Having a Wolf and Batsy book, that Tricks or Treats from Ben Soto. I love themed stuff like that. That is just going to be like holiday, seasonally appropriate. I only watch. I don't really watch horror movies, but I watch, horror-like movies, like all of the fun Sleepy Hollow and Ninth Gate and all those kind of movies from now until November. Oh man, I did not see Megalopolis yet.
Oh, somebody we were talking. It's clobbering time Friday night, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretentious. I don't mind. I'll be pretentious." And I was talking about how me and you joke around about just. And somebody was like, "Well, you are so pretentious. You've passed the pre-stage. You've entered it. You are post-tentious." I'm like, "Yes, post-tentious.
That's even better.
I'm beyond pretentious.
Postmodern pretentiousness.
Post-
Love it.
I said, just the fact that we're having this conversation is pretentious."
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, I think people need weird movies sometimes. So I think when a weird movie comes out, it's jarring for them. So they're expecting whatever they're expecting, and then they watch Megalopolis, which I don't know if it's good or not. I think it'll be interesting. At the minimum, it'll be interesting. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Gorgeous, right? It's Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, The Godfather 1 and 2, Apocalypse Now, Dracula. I mean, Outsiders on rewatch is pretty maudlin. But it's actually a beautiful looking movie, so.
Oh, that's right. He did he do Rumblefish also?
I don't think. I could be wrong about that.
But Francis Ford Coppola. Yeah,
Did he?
I love Dracula. I saw that in the movie theater, and I still have the desire to rewatch that every once in a while. Maybe read the book first time.
And now that's a beautiful movie, man. The costume design, the set design. Again, it's whether it's accurate or not. I set that aside. And even at the time, I know people gave Keanu Reeves a lot of guff for his.
He's a bad actor, but I like him. He's a likable bad actor.
Exactly. He's still fun to watch. So,
Which is why he was perfect in The Matrix. He was just like, huh? What's going on? Huh? You know what I mean? Like, play a clueless guy.
I was made for this role.
And John Wick, he doesn't have to act. He just physically moves around. So that's good for him.
Yeah, he just has a couple of lines here and there, and he's pretty much good to go.
Dog, and that's it. That's all he has to say.
You know what? I want to show. I got this in the mail the other day. I want to show this comic. I don't know if you know this or not. So I was unaware of this. This is because it's pretty. To me, it's new, right?
Oh,
it's not.
Yes. Yeah,
somebody was talking.
That was a DC 5th week event. This comics come out on Wednesdays, and every once in a while there's a 5th Wednesday in the month. So they would make a 5th week event because they didn't want to make it so that you got used to not going to I don't need to go to the comic store this Wednesday.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so so comics would have a schedule. They come out every Wednesday. And everything was staggered. All the DC, all Marvel products were divided into 4 and came out once, all the 13th, the 27th, or whatever. But then, this month has a 5th Wednesday, so let's make up something. That's why they had like JL Ape, if you remember. They had DC 1 Million, and this was Stan Lee that reimagines DC.
Yeah. I didn't know about that. I wasn't a big DC guy, but the biggest thing that I realized is that the year this came out, which I don't have it in front of me. So I think John Buscema was like in his 70s at this point, and he's still doing like classic, great John Buscema art.
Is that So that's like Superman. He's blonde, blue-eyed, drawn by Buscema. Yeah. So it's like DC if Stan Lee, if Marvel did them.
Yeah.
And this was a big deal because I think he was mad at Marvel or trying to renegotiate a deal, so he went and did something with DC.
I didn't. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't get over it. Like outside of Will Eisner, I don't know how many artists like maintained like a really high skill level. I know people say Gene Colan. That's the only other person that I know that was doing it into his maybe even 80s. I don't know. But John Buscema, I mean, he's kicking butt at like 75. That really made me happy. Because I didn't know that. I mean, heck, when he was doing Wolverine, now that I think about it, he must have been in his 60s at least, right? So anyway, that was cool. I mean, the story's fine, but to me, it's like this gives me hope because you can write up until you literally die at your typewriter. That's fine. But as an artist, that's something we all worry about so much, whether it's our eyesight or like your hands going or what.
I was
Man,
just talking about this today for Sunday Comics, Swamp Thing number 50. And if my memory serves, John Toddleben was suffering eyesight impairment at the time, to the point when he ended up leaving Swamp Thing. They said that he could only see like a little tunnel, and he would be like this close to each panel.
wow.
You know what I mean? And he still, I think, put out some of the best comics ever, art wise.
Yeah, I popped in a little bit and I saw the art. It looked amazing. Yeah.
I hope Brian Val watches it. All the monsters in the background, he's gonna love it. Every time I look at it, I notice a big goat guy standing in the background. You know, I never. There's just so much to look at.
Yeah, it's funny because as much as I love superhero comics, it's so fun to draw more horror stuff. It's like, yeah, I like to listen to this music, but playing, jazz is really fun.
Yeah, I like punk rock, but every once in a while I put on a Captain Beefheart album. Just, yeah. Oh my God, this is so bizarre. Like nobody's home, or I have headphones on, nobody can hear because you get made fun of. Like
for sure.
So
what's next for Heroic Tales? Where's everything at as far as the campaigns and?
So the pre-press guy said he'll be done by tomorrow. So I talked to Brian, and Brian gave me all of his information about like the printer and the specs. I'm so scared about this part, and then I just don't want to mess it up. So the PDF is ready. I could send out the PDF, but I just don't think it's fair because I don't know how long it's, what if the printer says, yeah, there's a problem. We can't print for 6 weeks. And then the people like, I paid, and these guys have been reading so I feel like whatever you do, somebody's going to get mad. So I figured that the fairest thing to do is I'm going to wait till I'm actually physically mailing something. Then that night I'll send out the PDFs. Anybody?
Okay.
So the PDF is ready to go out. Pre-press, I was told tomorrow will be done, and then we start talking to the printer, and then whatever the printer says. So how long does it take when you talk to the printer to actual printing?
I think it was. I think it took 3 weeks from whenever I send this is after after the proof is done. So proof was a couple of weeks for me.
So I could be a month then, of printing.
Potentially, it depends where the printing is being done. A lot of printing is done overseas, so it takes time. Some printing is done here. The printer I use is US based, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, you might want to at least keep, think maybe a couple of weeks for the proof, and then from there a couple of weeks for the books.
So there you go. That's what I'm up. As far as issue number 2 is concerned, Renzo just handed in another page, so I think we're up to page 8. At a 37.
That's great.
Yeah. So I'm streamlining the process. I'm a little bit more organized. I can't believe I did. I set up like a Google file, and everybody could put files directly into it. You know what I mean? So Fabrizio, you do a page. I never added Renzo. Renzo's the artist, and he didn't have access to the file. How the hell did I get this far? You know what I mean? I don't know. That's how funny. So and then I got them all put in order. I was like, what the? Renzo's like, I didn't know there was a folder. I was like, how the hell was these? Other people was just like, oh, well, we're just putting them in. I was like, oh my God.
Your neighbor and your family have access, but Renzo doesn't.
Doing the forensic. So I was like, oh crap. So I had to put, so I'm just trying to get ahead on it by learning from my many, 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 many errors. But
yeah, it's kind of endless. It feels like it's endless. And I even had a pretty good head start as far as all the software and all that stuff, but I've always been a digital, like the outcome has always been digital for me as far as printing. And it feels like no matter what, each printer has their own idiosyncrasies and their own slightly different formats or bleeds or this or that. So it's almost like you have to relearn it based on the printer anyway. So even if you might learn something today and then it doesn't apply, if you're going to use a different printer or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm super nervous now. I'm a hardcore. I'm reading it like it's my channel.
That's okay.
I'm a hardcore Red Mice and Swamp Thing. I always hated the way more changes from Alicant to Nature's. Yeah, F that. Controversial, big changes. I liked, I'm not gonna lie. I stumbled onto Swamp Thing right before Alan Moore, so it was the Martin Pascal run with the Yeats. Was that the right artist? And I loved it. I thought it was really good. And then I went and I got all the back issues, but I didn't know that there was a series before by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson. So and then Alan Moore came in like a month or two later, and I didn't know who Alan Moore was. This was before The Watchmen, and I loved it. So I did, but I think it's like you like the music that came out when you were in high school.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, the problem is, where do you go from there? Like the next writers had to top it, and the next writers had to top. I call it the Doctor Who syndrome. Doctor Who has a companion, and one of the companions was just like, I'm done. I want to go back to Earth now. I miss my family. Okay, there was no big fanfare. They just leave. And the next guy has to go out dying. And then the next guy has to go out saving the universe. And then they always top the ending of the last companion, and it's just like one of the companions not only died, but went back in time, saved himself, and then got a TARDIS for themselves and became their own version of Doctor. Like, what is the next companion? How is the next companion going to leave?
Man, it's funny because I actually I like small stories, and sometimes I think I'm a minority in that, but whether it's a movie or a comic or anything, it can be a tiny story involving 4 people. It doesn't have to be, if we don't do this, the world is going to end. It doesn't always have to be that. So
now they made him, he's the plant elemental, then he was the fire element, then he became the planet elemental.
Yeah.
They kept. So I understand where Brian's going. But I agree with you. It's small stories. I want to do more small stories involving character. It's big to them, but
yes,
if you pan out the guys next to them ordering a sandwich at the deli, they have no clue.
Yeah,
what's going on with those guys. I like that too. I mean, I do have a grand story that I want to tell, but you can't start out on issue 1 with the grand. Then where do you go? Then it becomes Doctor Who syndrome. You got to top that story.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't think the MCU would have worked if Thanos showed up in the first Avengers movie.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you have to build up to it if you want to get to that point. I know for Horace H. Hoover, I did have, I don't know, and I know we all think about things a little differently, but to me, like, these really personal moments are the things that I look most forward to. There's one particular scene with Horace, and it's a very personal moment, but it's such a huge deal for me. And you want to hope that the viewers or the readers feel that as well. And they're not be like, oh crap, it's just a little personal moment, and it's not an army of monsters coming to kill Horace. I'm like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's there as well, but
yeah.
Alrighty.
See if I recognize any names in your chat.
So yeah, this was fun. It's usually on Sundays I'm drawing and inking.
You didn't draw that?
No, I kept reading that Dylan Dog Batman book, and I kept on thinking, I'm like, and I'm like, you know what? I want to just kind of talk about it, just because, especially when I read a new book and an old book very closely, the differences are stark, like really stark. And not that the Batman book Dylan Dog is bad in any way. I just mean it's just very different.
Different styles. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Watch an old 60s sci-fi and then watch a new sci-fi. You watch Star Trek. I can see why kids today don't want to watch Captain Kirk and Spock. And they're fighting, and you see the wall shaking because it's obviously cardboard.
Yeah, and like focus and attention. I mean, I think about this all the time. Nobody I don't say nobody, but not very many people sit down and watch a 2-hour movie. They watch it in 15, 20-minute increments. They're
Oh,
doing something else while they're watching the movie. It really is. It's just a different sort of
like
attitude.
I didn't see, but I wonder if you just made me think of this. The original, I forget, was it 1935, whatever, the original King Kong, I forget what year it came out. And then if you were to watch that with, didn't Peter Jackson do a new Peter?
Yeah.
Like, you don't see King Kong for like 45 minutes. Like, I remember as a kid, like, I would just like, call me when they get to the island.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't care about all that. I still couldn't name the names of the human characters. You know, like, she's Fay Ray. I don't remember what the name of her.
Yeah, that's true. I don't remember. And I love the Peter Jackson remake too. I thought it was great. There was a few parts that could have been cut out, but overall, I thought it was great.
But how long until they get to Kong? Was there a 45 minutes of like, I love you? Like, no, you don't. I want, you know.
Yeah,
It's going, you know.
I think I can't remember, but I feel like there was a big lead up to it. And it just had a great atmosphere, like when they were on the boat leading up to the island. I remember liking it. I haven't seen it in quite some time, but
you know,
it's definitely
like it's like short attention span. Like, we got to get to the monster right away. Like, could you imagine? Like, remember those hour-long Twilight Zones? You know, a Twilight Zone was like a half hour. Then at one point there was an hour, and the hour ones to me had like a lot of like, you know, just get to it. Come on, get to it. I want to see the guy with one eyeball. You know, get to it. You know?
Yeah, it's a fine line. It's like, okay, in my head, as a writer, I want to build up these certain things, whether it's character interactions and setting and tone. But then as a consumer, you're like, I want to see Dracula, you know, and you're teasing me. Yeah, I don't know. I just watched the remake of Salem's Lot on Max. And I mean, in my opinion, there were way too many vampires and they took up too much of the movie. I feel like it should have been very end of the movie for the most part. You know, I would have rather had more character interaction, but man, I don't know. I listened to your stream the other night with Nick Axe on Comic Book Team Up, and you guys were talking about objective beauty and objective good and all that kind of stuff, and taste and things like that. I think about that a lot. And I do think taste has so much to do with it, you know?
Yeah. I remember in college, I was dating this girl, and she was the first person to ever call me pretentious. She was wonderful. But she would like, you like artsy fartsy movies. Like, I'll never forget. She took me to go see, why can't I think of the name of the movie? But it was Dolly Parton and I think Lily Tomlin, City Slickers, or not City Slickers, but it was something like that. Like, there was a country version, and then they went to the city. They found doppelgangers of themselves, but they, you know, one was the city version, one was the country version. You know, the city version learned the value of a good hard day's work, and the country version learned like the appreciation. And it was terrible. And I was like furious. I was such a jerk to the whole movie. Just be nice. Just watch. So I remember, as revenge, I took her to go see The Madness of King George II. And she was, you know, like yawning to the whole movie.
You jerk. Yeah. Yeah, there are times.
You're an art snob. But,
it's okay sometimes. Yeah, I honestly feel like that sometimes comics could use a little more pretentiousness, and sometimes it could use more pulp, and sometimes it, you know, I don't know. I feel like there's been a lot of one note stuff for so long, you know, that you just tap out at that point, and it's like, well, I can't go there for anything I'm looking for.
Oh no.
Alrighty. Well, I
might do a stream later on tonight, like talking. Somebody asked me this morning about isn't everything just a copy of everything else? And I was like, well, no, Captain Marvel was a copy of Superman, but Captain Marvel's his own thing.
Yeah.
You know? So I think tonight I might do a homage ripoff. I can't.
Cool.
Homage ripoff or There was another word. I had a perfect title when I was laid in my chair.
Yeah.
My nap.
I don't know, inspiration or no, that's a good topic. I get that's the other thing I think about too. People are just, pulling things here and there, but it is a different thing. So
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Like the Punisher is just a ripoff of what, like Remo Williams, the Destroyer, and the Executioner, from the pulp novels. But nobody's going to argue that the Punisher isn't cool and original.
Yeah. Yeah, and how much do you have to bring to the new thing to make it original?
Yeah, because I fully admit my character, the Patriarch, is inspired by Superman. Like I wanted to look as much like Superman and not at the same time.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like Superman. So yeah,
it's inspired by. Yeah, so rip off homage or inspiration. There we go. That was the name of the title.
Yeah.
And I want to get I'll actually get like screen captures and put up images.
That's cool.
So
yeah,
definitely invited to that if you guys want.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the one thing I always think about is Batman, because I've watched multiple things on the origins of Batman. But the most interesting I thought was the ties between Spring-Heeled Jack and Batman. Have you ever heard this?
Yeah, I didn't know about that until maybe a couple of years ago. Spring-Heeled Jack is so freaking cool.
Yeah, I actually want to use Spring-Heeled Jack in a comic, in like a Horus, because it's that time period. One of the sightings was actually early 20s or whatever. I thought that would fit right in with like a Horace H. Hoover story. So
wasn't that England, and like it was supposed to be like they didn't know if it was a supernatural creature or if a guy literally with springs in his heels leaping over fences and stuff.
Yeah, the sightings are weird, and they do contradict, but they're all cool. Like sort of like a death's head mask, red eyes. I think one was like he wore like white leather, which I thought was interesting. Some people thought that was skin. Some people thought it was. Yeah, wow. I love the Spring-Heeled Jack stuff. There's a lot to play with that.
The urban legend. I love that La Llorona. Do you know that one?
I don't know if I do.
L-A-L-L-O-R-N-A. I think it's pronounced with the tilde over the end. But it's supposedly it was a woman that she drowned her own children. Now that's like the consistent, and then she drowned herself, and then she comes back as a ghost, lamenting her dead children. This was when I learned about this when I was in New Mexico. So I think it was like a southwestern thing. But and Supernatural did like a variation on her, but she I think it means like the weeping woman. Now some of the stories is that she met a man, he wooed her, said, I love you, but I got to go. Like I'm a soldier or whatever. And then he went off and died, or he was just a creep and just said what he could to get in her pants and then left. That's where the details change. So either she drowned the kids because she was mad that the father was a cad, or she drowned the kids because out of, we're all going to die anyway. Your father died in the war or whatever, you know what I mean? But either way, she comes back and she regrets it. And then what she does is she steals other people's children. You know what I mean? So keep your kids away from La Llorona will come. It's one of those scary things to keep children behaved. I don't know. I love that story.
That is creepy.
I knew Brian would know. There's a great Mexican horror film from the 60s called The Crying Woman. Yeah. Okay, Brian.
La Llorona.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, I would love to put her in a comic at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if I would use Spring-Heeled Jack, but you start with Spring-Heeled Jack and you're like, okay, I'll do a twist on him, throw him in the book, and maybe like do a nod or something, just so.
Bounty Joe.
Leaf Spring Jack. Yeah. I know that like steampunk people have sort of adopted Spring-Heeled Jack too.
Oh, really? Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like this, I just got this in the mail. This is a damn dirty thing. It's by Doc Blaylock, who was on my channel a few times. I was on his channel. and he's doing a pulp detective magician. So he's telling me all about it, and I'm like, "Do you know about Harry Dresden and the Dresden Files?" And he's
I
like,
was
"Yeah."
just gonna say.
No, you know, it's, but like again, homage, parody, inspired by what, and Harry Dresden is, every other dime store pulp novel.
Yeah.
Magic, and this like he does a few spells right off the bat to set up the world. So I was just like, do you know Harry Dresden? But the thing is, like the personality is completely different, the motivations are different. So he's his own character to the point. I would love to see him go meet Harry.
Interesting.
That I would love to see, like what would Jake Bishop and
Jake,
Portia
that's a good
Vance.
name. Jake
Portia
Bishop.
Vance, that's his lovely assistant. What a great name.
Yeah, like Harry Dresden is he's kind of a jerk, basically. He's not really a nice guy.
Well, he isn't. I think he's a wonderful chivalrous guy, and that's his problem. Like, he's old fashioned.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he is kind of like a Constantine in that he's not above using you and not telling you all the information.
I didn't read all of the books. I probably read maybe the first 4 or 5. It's been a long time, but I liked them.
Yeah, as soon as they come out, I read them. I love the way that kind of has the Doctor Who, the threats escalating.
Yeah.
The newest book, I'm like, there's no turning back. The whole world knows about magic now. Like, the threat is so bad that you just like, oh, basically Galactus came. How are you gonna, I always wonder, like in the Marvel universe when they talk about space aliens, like, dude, do you guys remember Galactus came and Fantastic Four had to fight Galactus? Like, everybody in Marvel universe has got to be jaded at this point. They're just like, there's aliens, and there's monsters, there's demons, like,
you name it.
Like, how could Batman still claim to be an atheist? Like, dude, you basically met God,
Yeah. Yeah, that is.
You met demons.
It is odd. There is Horace H. Hoover walking around the streets of New York with Slurp and Max. There's a certain amount of suspension of disbelief, and it could be maybe I haven't explained it. Maybe I'll never explain it. You know what I mean? Like, you just have to, unless your character looks like everybody else, there has to be a certain.
Well, so far in your book, there hasn't been like worldwide events. Like,
no,
like anything like so far, like you said, you kept everything small with the exception of that one town with the tentacles and everything like that. But how many, like right now we have there could be an occult occurrence right now in North Carolina with a hurricane.
Yeah,
Cthulhu could be walking the earth, right? We just don't know about it. You know what I mean? And then what? 5 years from now, people are like, no, Cthulhu was there in the middle of the hurricane. There was Cthulhu.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's true. I mean, back then, it's even if people saw it, would people believe it? How would they describe it? By the time it reaches the West Coast, what has it turned into or not?
And,
like
UFO people, like there's a comic that just came out called Blue Book, and it's based on real government UFO abductions, and some of them, like scientists are like, there's no way this person could have faked this. You know what I mean? Like, but now, like, didn't like a year ago, like all over the internet, like the government confirmed UFOs exist. I'm like, I don't even, not only do I not believe it, I don't care anymore. Like, we were so desensitized to all of this stuff. Like, oh wait, the current politicians dip it in the polls, release the UFO files. Like, well, now that the government says that they're real, I don't believe it anymore. So.
Yeah, I don't believe anything. I remember talking to somebody and they said, well, how do you know what to believe? As a rule, I don't believe anything, but I still try to like deduce from axioms. I know that sounds fancy, but it's just, you've experienced enough of X in your life. And if you hear something that goes against X, you're going to probably just dismiss it, basically.
Last week when I was here, we talked about Tartaria. Have you looked that up at all?
I haven't. I was going to ask you about that.
I just want to believe it, but it's you know, they look at like the Chicago World's Fair, and like in Utah they built a post office, and it's this like old, I don't want to say Gothic, I don't know that much about architecture, but it's an old stone building. They're like, yeah, the cowboys go out there, and then next thing you know, they built it. Like, well, that you're oversimplifying it, you know, because in the town that I grew up in, the first building in my town, it's still there. It's called the Koch Building, and it's this huge. It almost looks like a cathedral, and it's so out of place. Like that's evidence of Tartaria. These people knew how to build this stuff, and then and then the government tore down all these buildings, and you know, they have an aerial photograph from like the 1860s of Boston. You know, like, how'd they take this picture? I'm like, well, they probably put it on a balloon and took a picture. You're like, no, right. They had spacecraft. It's like you just want to believe this stuff, but it's such a fun conspiracy theory that the Tartarians had this 1,000-year empire, and they're saying it was the rule of Christ, and that's why the government doesn't want us to know about it, because it proves that the Bible was correct, that there was this time of peace. It's like, dude, have you known about the last 1,000 years? There was no peace, and now that we're in the times of Revelations, but the government doesn't want you to know all the. It's just so much fun how one person could, like, you know, and supposedly there was in the 1916 almanac. It talked about the Empire of Tartaria, but I don't know if that book is real. Like, I don't even believe a book, but I don't know. You could print out a book today.
Yeah.
You know, but I love all these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I love that idea, especially the architecture. So I love the Chicago's World Fair. There's a book called Devil in the White City. I don't know if you know it. It's about Chicago's World's Fair. It's a fascinating book. And H.H. Holmes, the serial killer.
Right.
And sort of how they're aligned and taking place at the same time. It's a fascinating book.
That's how he was able to get so many victims, right? They were coming to his place. Yeah.
But reading about the Chicago's World Fair.
It's best you didn't go down into that doorway in that bread and breakfast. Maybe that was like Harold Holmes. It's his grandnephew or something.
Seriously, I mean, it was horror hotels, murder hotels. And but the Chicago's World Fair, just reading about it, it does seem like a utopia, like a sci-fi futuristic utopia that happened, 100 years ago. It's such a weird thing.
And then they took it all apart. They dismantled it. You know what I mean? Like,
I think
part of the conspiracy that was already there. We found it, and then we made a fair as the cover up to hide up the Tartarian Empire. And then dismantled it and said it was all plastic.
I love that.
Part of me thinks that there's a guy who's just like, this is the greatest hoax. I'm getting people to believe this.
It is fun, though. Like you said, it's a fun conspiracy theory. I mean, I've had this conversation with people where people just, it's not true. I'm like, yeah, but it's fun to think about. Like,
right.
That's part of it. Like, you don't have to, I don't know. You don't have to devote your life to it, and
but as a comic book fan, it's like every third comic is based on some sort of conspiracy theory. You know, you got the Skrulls that were the communists had taken over to like warlords inner Earth, and you know what I mean. Everything's. Oh
yeah, you get to explain. Oh jeez.
What comic do you recommend for starters? You like you're brand new into comics?
Wow, that's cool.
I'm glad you never.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, you go first because I want to think about this.
I'm trying to think. I'm going to recommend like 30-year-old comics.
I know. Me too.
I honestly don't know. Like, if you were to walk into a comic book store and get something off the shelf, I don't know what to recommend because it's been so long since I bought, new stuff off the shelf. I would say, like. Do you like lighter stuff? Do you like horror stuff? Do you like superheroes? Because there's everything, and there's so much good stuff in every category. Like, if you like horror stuff, I'd say get Ryan Powell's Wolf and Batsy. He's started on the 13th of this month, so you can get in on that. And that's inexpensive to get like a whole bunch of issues. I would say, like, right now, if you want to go into a comic book store, I would say Usagi Yojimbo. I freaking love that comic. That is so good. There's Hellboy one-shots that just come out infrequently. Like, you could go in and it just says like Hellboy, and it just says like Hellboy 1952. and it's
Yeah.
just one story complete in the comic. That is, as much as Hellboy has a 20-year history, you could get one comic and enjoy the story for what you like. I would say,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, those trade paperbacks of just good stories. Like, you want
Yeah.
War Hulk is just a good Hulk story with great art, complete. I mean, getting floppies. This is contrary to popular belief. I wouldn't recommend getting like floppies, but after about a couple of stories, you're like, I like this artist. Just like with bands, I noticed I would get into a band and they would all say they like the Velvet Underground. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to listen to Velvet Underground.
They do say that.
Yeah. So okay, I got World War Hulk. Is there anything else Greg Pak wrote? And then I really like this Turn of Bucky story. You know what I mean? Written by drawn by Steve Epting. I want to get more Steve Epting art, or Kingdom Come. I really like Mark Waid and Alec Ross, so I'm going to follow them. That's what I would do. I couldn't tell you what monthlies to buy right now because I wouldn't know.
I will say, find something that has books out, because it would be a shame if you just randomly pick something and it was the first issue or something. Like, that way, you could have 20 issues or 4 graphic novels like ahead of you. If you like this, you can read Hellboy for the next 3 months and just devour everything. So like, pick a genre. Like he said, there's horror, there's fantasy, there's sci-fi, and pick something that has a little bit of history at least. That way you can dig into it and get, like, if you want one story, cool, but you could potentially have months of reading ahead. So
yeah.
And if you pick something, come back to the channel and let me know what you picked. It'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, Lemon Soda. Yeah, please. That would be fun. Did you watch the Marvel movies? And you're like, yeah, I like comics now. Like, pick up the Secret Wars trade paperback. That has every character, gets you the taste. Did you like the Batman movies? I would say, like, get like Batman No Man's Land, just a trade paperback of all of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never had that question, and it's actually kind of a hard question. It's not, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of roads you can go down, and it can get expensive depending on what you buy, so trade paperbacks and collected volumes, I think, are the way to go. But I think I'm going to head out for the day. Thanks, everybody, for joining the chat. Thank you, John. This was fun. I think I'm going to do open streams more often just because
it's fun to talk to somebody rather than filibuster on,
Yeah, exactly. Marcus. There's Alex Ross Kingdom Come being funded on... What? Really?
What?
I didn't know.
Continuation or like a master edition?
Yeah.
I'll look
that up. I'm really curious. I've had a volatile relationship with Kingdom Come. There it is. Oh, it's a documentary. Interesting.
Oh, it's a documentary? Okay.
Yeah, how the vision of Alice Ross redefined comic art and superheroes across generations. I would definitely watch that. I'm not going to fund it, but that's interesting. Alex Ross, as soon as he hit, we're all just amazed by the art, first of all. And the stories were okay. It was at the Marvel or whatever.
It was right after the Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross Marvel.
And then Kingdom Come was, it's a good story and the artwork is great. But then I just saw other stuff that I was less impressed with. And I just felt like, then you start to notice he uses the same reference for all of his characters. There are like certain things that now when I see it, I'm like, oh, it's Alex Ross. So it's, he's amazing. Don't get me wrong. He's, he's an amazing artist.
One of my friends, Cam, down in Florida, he's like, F Alex Ross, give me a Just Go any day of the week. You want like realistic painted comic.
Yeah.
He's like all bombastic, and Thor still looks like a god. He doesn't look like your weightlifted friend in an ill-fitting suit, which is kind of.
Yeah.
But I would love to see an Alex Ross costume on a movie. You know how like at first glance when you see Batman, Alex Ross does Batman, it looks like a 40s weightlifter
Yeah.
in like a felt costume, and it looks so cool. That's what I want to see in a Batman movie. I don't like armored Batman who could get shot in the chest by bullets. I want to see stealth Batman that doesn't get shot with bullets because he's behind you. You know, he's sneaking up.
Yeah.
That's Batman.
I think that's where Watchmen actually was the closest to sort of traditional comic books, especially the it's been so long since I read it or watched it, but like the first iteration of the Watchmen.
Yeah, the Minutemen.
Yeah, the Minutemen. Like those costumes and like on screen, those costumes were like as close to a comic book as I've ever seen for the most part. But is it Earth X?
Movie.
Earth X, is it?
Yes, the Marvel future.
Yeah. What's that?
I said that is so good.
It is, and one of the reasons I like it is because it's not all painted; it's inked. So I think he did layouts and just did like brushwork. So that, like, if I had to have Alex Ross do anything, I think that style for Earth X is something I would much rather see. But anyway, what do I know? All right, yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody for popping in. I appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
What's that, John?
I say that Kingdom Come, it's a big inspiration on the Patriarch. The fact that Superman is seen as the father figure to all the superheroes, and when he becomes an absent dad, all the superheroes become spoiled brats, and and then Superman needs to come down. There needs to be like, you know what I mean, like a house full of kids. Dad is not there. They're all whine, and then now Dad shows up, and there's a real threat that they're gonna get smacked in the head. They don't behave. I love Superman. Like he's the father figure because he's the first superhero, but he's also the most powerful superhero, and he's also like the goodest good guy. Like like when people say like I don't like Superman, he's a Boy Scout. It's like, well, that's Superman. Superman is the good guy. He's the old fashioned. He holds the door open for ladies. He tips his hat. He does all that goofy stuff that we kind of make fun of, but at the same time, we're like, that's the right thing to do. Like we all. And if Superman was to like stick out his tongue and razz an old lady, you'd be like, that's not right. But then we kind of goof on him because like it's safe to goof on him because Superman would never just lash out on you.
That's interesting. I you know what? I never thought about it that way, to be honest. And now in my head, and I honestly I haven't read much Superman, so I've read some DC, but not a ton. I keep thinking about like Justice League International, which is one of my favorite runs, and I just can imagine Superman just coming down, and like, oh crap, we're in trouble. Like we're just goofing off, Blue Beetle, and so that is interesting. I never thought about it that way.
And that's why any attempt to modernize or to update Superman is doomed for failure, because Superman is like, that's what he is. He's the old fashioned Boy Scout that defines everything else for a generation. Nobody wants Dad to all of a sudden show up in a cool shirt and a mullet being like, hey, look at me, I'm cool now. Knock it off, Dad. You're supposed to be so goofy and old fashioned and dependable and and wise. You don't want Dad showing up in a Ferrari with a hot blonde next to him. Hey, look at me.
Hey, I'm going to smoke the reefer with you guys.
That's cool. You can smoke the reefer. Is your girlfriend staying over? That's cool. Perfection. Dad, shut up.
That's so funny. And you mentioned, I thought I heard you say that you don't like The Dark Knight because of the depiction of Superman in that.
Yeah. Superman, the government stooge, the bad guy.
Yeah.
I just like, I don't like that. It just bothers me. It just ruined it for me. Forget about Dark Knight, the second one. It just got worse and worse and worse. But like paradoxically, I like Watchmen because they were his own characters. You can do whatever you want with your own characters.
Yeah.
But don't make Superman the bad guy so you can. That's like jobbing. You know what I mean? Like the war. Like I just heard this term today, the Worf effect. Alien comes out and takes out Worf right away just to show how tough he is. It's like Worf gets beat up every third episode. Maybe Worf ain't so tough.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the Worf effect. That is pretty.
Yeah.
That is accurate. That's cool. And I like that really specific version of Superman because, again, I haven't read a bunch. So to me, I've seen probably iterations of that, maybe, but maybe not like in its truest form, just because I haven't read much Superman. But I can see that.
The only one that's more of a goody should be Captain Marvel, because he's like the idolized 12-year-old. Like Captain Marvel is supposed to be the 12-year-old who idolizes Superman. So even he puts Superman even higher on a pedestal. Then when he becomes Captain Marvel, he becomes the hero that he idolizes.
Yeah.
That's the way it's like Captain Marvel should never be modernized. Like the movie was okay. The first movie was okay, but like it should be like, I don't know, like set in the 40s or something like that. Like it just doesn't look in a very well.
That would be so cool if it was set in the 40s. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of the Marvel Captain America was the only sort of period piece superhero movie that we've seen. I think. I don't know if we've ever seen another.
But at the same time, if I remember, didn't the Howling Commandos have like blue laser guns in World War II? Am I imagining it wrong? Like when there was a scene where they're.
I honestly can't remember.
My memory might.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I saw that.
Yeah, I remember.
Hey, Dr. Mask, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing? Yeah. You keep trying to go, and I keep keeping you here. So
that's okay. Yeah, but I do have to wrap up. I have to get to Horace H. Hoover pages.
There you go.
Yeah, it's well, you know what? I will show this one time before I leave. So I mentioned this.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
doing a volume one of Horace H. Hoover on Amazon KDP, and it's been pretty cool. This is a proof, but it's the paper's real thin. It feels very, very graphic novel-y. And something I did is I have the new cover, have the new back, all the stuff. There's a couple extra images in the back, got the letters page. But what I did do is I pulled back the saturation a little bit. So it's pushed back a little bit so it's not as harsh or saturated. This was sort of like my intent in the beginning, to be honest. So yeah, so I'm almost there. I'm waiting for one more proof, and then this will be available on Amazon, and I'll point people to it. I think the best part of this is for international customers. It's Amazon, so wherever you're at, they'll ship it to you. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free shipping. So I thought that was a good.
Know how that works.
Yeah,
that's cool.
You do have to reformat it, and Amazon KDP's tool. There's definitely some idiosyncrasies that you got to figure out. But so it took me a while, but I think I finally have that.
I got Brian Bowes on Indie Planet, these print-on-demand books.
Okay.
And to be honest, I was putting off buying them because I thought that they would be like pixelated. My cousin is an author, and he's so pretentious about it. Oh, have you read my like you? We went to my uncle's funeral, and I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you. I'm an author. Have you read my book? Like, our uncle just died, and his brother's all right. But I ordered his book, and the cover was all pixelated. You know what I mean? And it was like like I'm self-published author. I guess I could walk around and say I'm an author now. I self-published my own comic.
Yeah.
So I put off buying these, but guy, this is awesome. This is such quality print. I'm like mad that I didn't buy it earlier, because these are Wolf of Batsy stories that I haven't read before. And when I got these, I'm like, this is such a high quality. Like print on demand is a lot different than it used to be.
Yeah, I've got to pick that up. But I was really shocked, honestly. I was like, I'll give it a try. But when I got it in the mail, I was like, there is virtually no difference between this and any other like collected thing I have. So
again, sorry, Brian, that I put off buying this for so long. I bought all four. These are awesome. Such good quality prints. I just was prepared, like, all right, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to get some
yeah.
crap product, and at least I get to read the story. No, I'm real happy with the print. So that's something to think about in the future.
Yeah, I think
Amazon people in Ireland could just get your comic for whatever.
Yeah, I really think that's a great solution, because I've had to ship to Canada, and even to Canada, it's double. It's the cost of the comic book in shipping. And I mean, that's brutal. I don't know if I would order anything if it was, $25 to ship, 3 floppies. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I shipped stuff. I shipped comics. I shipped Renzo copies of Wolf and Batsy and Horace H. Hoover. I think I shipped them like 10 comics. It was $40 in shipping to Mexico. And it took 3 months,
Yeah, that's crazy.
And he was like, I might not even get it. The post office sometimes just keeps stuff.
You have to bribe them with food or something. The other thing too is, I don't know if you down the road, I think I'm going to translate my book into first Italian, but because I can do that. But why not? You have a whole other market at that point. Like
Spanish opens up the world.
Spanish, yeah. So, especially with KDP,
Rini just translated Fiendish into Spanish, and she went to a convention in Mexico.
Yeah. So, because if I had to print 500 copies in Spanish or Italian, I'm not doing that. But if it's KDP, I don't have to upfront anything at that point. So why not? Really?
What do? You hire a translator?
Yeah. I mean, this is. Again, for Italian, I'll probably do it and have somebody look at it. But yeah, for Spanish, you would just hire a translator, and then your letterer would go in and replace the lettering. You might have to tweak, obviously, like where the lines break and all that stuff, and you might have to make the bubbles bigger or smaller.
What about, like, don't they speak like anachronistically? Like, are you just going to translate that literally, or are you going to have to find like old Spanish sayings? Like I don't recall, but like, hey, you gumshoe.
Yeah.
Like, you say that in Spanish, like gumshoe. What is that?
Yeah, there will definitely, like, you don't want to do like a straight translation. You want to do an interpretation of the language. So there's definitely going to be some, AI is pretty good, but you'll need ultimately a person to be the final arbiter of trying to interpret it.
I remember I read a literal translation of Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and I couldn't stand it. I was like, I was so excited to read it, and I hated it. And then about 5 years later, I bought a different translation, and it was like a little sleeker. Oh my God, I couldn't put it down. It's one of my favorite books. So, maybe they paraphrased things or changed it to give it the same flavor. Or
yeah.
I don't know.
It's amazing what a difference that makes. Some of my favorite books have been translated, but they were translated so long ago that they've had, I don't know how many editions, right? So like anything by Nabokov, well, actually, no, his wasn't translated. I'm sorry. Anything by Dostoevsky obviously has been translated, but it reads beautifully in a different language, which is crazy to think about that, so it's possible. You just have to find the right person that understands, like you said, the slang and things like that.
You read 100 Years of Solitude?
No.
Oh my God, it's so good. It's one of my favorite novels. It's Gabriel Marquez, I think. It's magical realism. It's set in like this family goes out to a South America jungle, and they found a town. I forget the name of the town. To me, I think it inspired Love and Rockets, because they talked about so much Love and Rockets. That's why I went out and read it. So they find a town, and this family lives there, and nobody dies because death doesn't know this town exists yet. They don't have a post office. They don't have a railroad. They don't have nothing. So only the people who live there know about this. And it's just this town where like death doesn't know about yet.
That's interesting.
And then finally they build a railroad to the town, and the 100-year-old lady dies because death finally.
Wow.
It's such a good book. Like
that is
even
cool.
that doesn't spoil how crazy this book is.
Yeah, that's great. Um, but yeah, I was talking about Dylan Dog earlier, and that was an Italian comic. And it got, again, I don't know how it got into the DC universe, absorbed, bought, I don't know, but what a great character. To discuss, like, it's one thing having your comic and your language and your culture, but to just to imagine somebody else in a different country in a different language, it's such a cool idea.
Do you know Perry Rodin?
No.
It's a French science fiction. It's like the French Buck Rogers. So it's like 60s, early 70s sci-fi in France. I want to get some English translations. Obviously, I can't read French, but it just looks so like wonderfully dated. And like how different would it be to read French science fiction? You know,
Yeah.
like when you watch Space 1999, we were talking about pacing. Like you sit through half the show, you're like, could somebody like move from this chair? Like, but I wonder like how would French sci-fi novels from the 60s translate to America right now? Like,
yeah, exactly. All those little things. There's a book called Brendan.
And apparently Perry Rodin sold like hundreds and thousands.
I don't have it.
You know, it was
What's
like
that?
super. I was just talking. I didn't know how long you were going to be, but I said
Sorry.
like this
Yeah.
is supposed to be like super popular in Europe, and you come here and we don't know anything about it. You know,
And it's so unfortunate. So there's a book called Brendan, which is kind of a dumb name, but anyway, it's another Italian book I had since I was pretty young. But it is the greatest mashup of like post-apocalyptic, kind of like the Dark Tower type stuff, sci-fi. It's just I've never seen anything like it. It's such a huge impact on what I love, but it's nobody knows of it, you know, like it should be.
Sure. Yeah, I bought a bunch of books that you recommended, and of course they're in a stack to be read that I haven't touched.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, matter of fact, right over here.
The other thing about having a book in another country is I can be hated in two countries instead of just one. I mean,
yeah. What the Veil, the book that you were talking about, the priest.
The Minister's Black Veil.
Yeah, I bought that, and then another one with Satan in the title. So my wife was like, "What are you reading this for?"
With Satan in the title? Did I?
Satanic Verses? Not Satanic Verses, but the Devil's Diary or something. Satan's Diary.
The Devil's Dictionary.
The Devil's Dictionary. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so good. I mean, it is a dictionary, but that's great.
I'm trying to read this now. This is just like it reads so different. Like this would not be made today.
Yeah,
it would be updated. You know, every you know, and it's funny because all the secondary characters are just there to tell Doc Savage how cool he is. Like, hey, you are the best. You're totally better than me at that. Why don't you decipher the message? Because you would do it better than me, Doc.
Yeah, that's true. You know, now you would have a team and everybody the best.
You know, that's what I would do. I mean, I would have a team like this guy's the best marksman. You know, this guy. But Doc Savage, you know, I assembled a team of people who are inferior than me.
Yeah.
Is it combination of the Devil's Dictionary? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Oh.
Yeah. The other book I always recommend if people are interested in Horace H. Hoover is it's in the Yellow Sign, or the Yellow King, sorry. And
I gotta read this. The Tintin.
What is that? I've never read them.
Yeah. I was like, I have a channel about comic books and I've never read Tintin. And I always show this off. This is still sealed, but you can see there's a space. Okay, if I turn it sideways, there's a space because they took out Tintin Goes to Congo.
Oh.
Because of like because they draw like the black people with spears and everything. And it's like,
I did not know that.
I just spent $125. Like, obviously I'm not offended. You know what I mean? Don't censor my material when if you sell it for $9, I can understand somebody just like, oh, I'll pick this up. they don't want to be pissed off. But I'm spending $125 on the complete collected Tintin, and you're leaving out one of his adventures. Now I gotta go buy it off of eBay.
That's not collected. You know what I should do? After I'm done with Horace H. Hoover and I have a bunch of volumes, it'll be like 1 to 10 volumes, and I'll just leave out volume 6. There won't be a volume 6. I'll just leave it out, so people will be endlessly scouring the world for this book that doesn't actually exist. Yeah, The Repair of Reputations. It's a really famous story, but if anybody has read that, that's another big influence on Horace H. Hoover. Although it was sort of like a post hoc influence. I came up with the character, and then I'm like, oh, you know what? This would be cool to incorporate more of that. I know that's really vague.
That's so. What's his name, right? You said that was the King in Yellow. Why can't I think of that?
Yeah. Robert Chambers.
Robert Chambers. Yeah, I got like a little. It's like a little flimsy King in Yellow book.
Yeah, it's not long.
It's like the play. Yeah, the Repair of Reputations is in that book.
Yeah,
I gotta read that again.
It's so it's a cool story.
I love the whole idea that the King in Yellow, or at least the Lovecraft's version, it's a play, but the play itself causes madness. Like the play is a spell. So like, I said, okay, guys, we're gonna do. I fund and I do the King in Yellow. The actors get their parts, and everybody, including the actors and the audience, they're transformed by the spell into like madness, and they just run in. So like according to Lovecraft, the play opens and closes the same night. The theater burns down. People are ripping each other's clothes off and punching each other. I was like, so it's like a band. I just love that idea that it's a play that, if performed properly, it's a spell that creates madness. I guess it invokes the King in Yellow or whatever. That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while since I read it. I don't think it's explicit in the book from Chambers. It's
no, that's how I heard from Lovecraft. But
okay.
And if you read the play, it's just a play.
Gotcha.
But like, don't they talk about like going to Carcosa and
yeah, Carcosa, he uses that a lot, which I actually think Carcosa he pulled from, somebody can fact check me, was it Hawthorne, or I think Carcosa
Chambers took Carcosa from somebody else.
I think so. Ambrose Bierce. Yeah. Carcosa is a fictional city in Ambrose Bierce. So it's like one person, it's just, I'm going to pull that. I'm going to pull this.
Yeah, like a shared universe. Ambrose Bierce, some tangential way, is in Conan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But they all, well, he didn't write to Ambrose Bierce, but all of those pulp guys, they all wrote to each other and encouraged each other to use each other's stuff.
Yeah. It's funny. To be so open about IP back then is interesting because, if I wanted to write a story set in Salem's Lot or something, just thinking out loud, I would get a summons or like a, cease and desist from the King estate, basically. But they were so open about it. Like, yeah, you want to use that? You want to use this name? It was.
I got this for 35.
Is that Evil Dead?
Yeah, it's a little tiny Necronomicon.
That's great.
And it's a book with pages and stuff.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's a little.
Oh my god, that's awesome!
I remember I got this. It was in a little envelope. I opened it up, and my wife was like, "What is it?" And she's like, "Okay." She goes, "You're going crazy," but it's been sitting here on my shelf for years. Like when I moved, I made sure I found it and put it right back in the same spot.
I remember buying the Necronomicon. They came out with that paperback. Like Necronomicon, must have been late 80s, something like that, early 90s. Me and my friend, because we'd been reading these books for years, and then we go to the store and we see Necronomicon, right? And we're like, oh my god, which is obviously just a fake book of a fake book of a fake book. But they did, right. But there are spells in it, which I think is hilarious. So I never really looked in to see who actually wrote this fake book. I'm sure people know what I'm talking about, but there are spells in it.
It was a black.
Yeah, it was black
with like a pentagram like symbol on, almost like a Zozo from that Led Zeppelin. And I'll tell you, I bought that book 3 times. It keeps disappearing. I don't know if my mother threw it away as a kid, and then later
That's
on I
funny.
lost it. But the Necronomicon will finally self-immolate, somewhere from your book.
So funny.
I don't know if my friends steal it or I lent it out. I don't know, but that book disappears every once in a while.
Yeah.
But it's a goofy scam,
Yeah, but I fell for it for sure. Even it's like, even though it's fake, there's just something about, if you're one of those people that love books and you feel like this inherent like power in them, you can't help it. It's
the perfect example. What is that one? The Voynich manuscripts?
Yeah, the Voynich manuscripts. Yeah,
like that's a hoax, right? That's not like, it's supposed to be Monk wrote it and drew it and everything, and nobody could decipher it, but it's really just some like goofy hoax.
I mean, I don't know if it was a hoax.
Okay.
I think it was an old hoax. You know what I mean? So if it was a hoax,
if it's an old hoax, then it's real, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. I don't, if it was 10 years ago, it's one thing, but if it's like a 300-year-old hoax, I'm like, well, that's its own mystery.
Oh, you want to know? You just made me think of something. There's a town in Italy, and there's like a castle built in and there's a ladder that's been leaning against the window for 300 years. Like, supposedly, like, somebody put up a ladder to fix something or whatever, and then they left it there, and like the town just watches, like, don't touch the freaking ladder. A ladder's just leaning against for 300 years. People like, don't, through storms, through, you know what I mean? It's like rooting for this ladder. It's like, please, I want to go to Italy and look at this ladder.
That's fascinating. I have to look that up. I totally get that. The most superstitious place on the planet. Yeah. Like, don't touch anything. You will
touch the ladder.
You will break the spell.
There's a website with like a light bulb that's been like continuously burning for like 110 years.
That's so funny.
Like, you could go to the website and just watch.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Dr. Mask, it's like Hellraiser puzzle box. I don't even want to fake one. I totally get that.
I went to my first year of college. I went to a community college, National Community College, and I went to talk to a school counselor. Like, what should I take? What is college? Like, you know what I mean? I didn't want to just like, what is college? So like, what should I take? What is my goal? So I got this guy. He must have been like one of the founders of the school. He was so old. And I asked him a question, and he went and he got up and he went across his incredibly it was like an H.P. Lovecraft antiquarian's office, old wooden bookshelves, books all over the place. It was just like, it's exactly what I wanted when I went to a college professor's office. Like, I've never seen. Now you go to a college professor's office, it's just a computer. It's very sterile. It's a fold-up table or whatever. But this was like it might as well have been Oxford or something like that, for community college. And he got a book and he picked it up off the windowsill, and there was just dust around it. And then he just stopped and he goes, I haven't touched this book in 35 years. And I was like, wow. I don't know why. I was like, put it back. Too late. The spell's been broken. Like, so now I'm kind of obsessed with, like, I want to put a book in a spot and be able to say that book's been there for 50 years. You know what I mean? It's just something. I was like, oh man, I ruined this guy's like spell that, or all the magic energy that was accumulating just got disappeared. Why did you have to move that book? I could have lived without that answer. I don't even remember the question. I remember the book.
That is so cool. Yeah, you're right. It would just be laptops and maybe a book or two to make it look better.
Diplomas on the wall and then nothing else. Nowadays, you want to see my comic book collection? Here you go. That's not your comic book collection. That's a bunch of data files.
Yeah, exactly. Although, I've showed mine books before, and they're all backwards and stacked.
Yeah.
It is hard finding things. Although I've read them all, so I don't.
My wife said that's mean to do to your books. By the way, they need, you're not showing their face.
That's funny.
But right, don't we assign human traits to inanimate objects all the time?
Absolutely. I mean, especially books. Like, if you've read a book, you've spent so much time with that book. It's a chunk of your life, and then you imagine it's a chunk of the author's life. Like, there's a lot there's a lot embedded in there, and I know I'm getting a little too maybe artsy about that, but
No,
I don't know, if you love books, then this sounds like a totally normal conversation.
like I took this book out and I'm like, yay. It was like visiting a friend that I love.
Yeah.
And this sounds weird. At the age of 56, when I read a comic, I'm like, okay, put it in the bag of board. I'm like, I probably never read that again. Like I
Yeah.
have 5,000 comics. I'm not going to read them all again. I'm like, so I try to spend as much time with that comic. Like I got board games. Like, my old friend, we're gonna play again. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope I get a chance to play this again. I also looked at like Horace H. Hoover. I put him in alphabetical order. Like, who's Horace H. Hoover's neighbor going to be?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Who's in front and who's behind? Because that's who
Yeah.
they're going to be interacting with while the lights are off.
That's great. It's funny. You're like the top 10 or the hogging the covers videos that you're doing, which are again so much fun. Whenever I was going through my books, I picked out a ton, obviously. So I have a few stacks that are just sitting out, and I'm like, I can't wait to do it again eventually, and I'll do these other covers. But the thing you just said is so true, because one of the reasons I picked those covers is I must have read all of those books, I don't know how many times, dozens and dozens and dozens of times, maybe. It's a totally different thing when you've just read a book once and then it's over. Like there's that Thor cover that I've read countless times. It's immediately like, it's like seeing a pretty girl walk into the room. There's just something like that happens.
It brings back like a whole chunk of your life. Like those Keith Pollard Hulks. I remember talking to friends, Keith Pollard Thors rather. I remember talking to friends. I remember reading them over and over again. Like I remember going camping and bringing comics, and sitting in the tent while it was raining out, just reading those comics with a little lantern, things like that. And then, like I bought this because I missed it when it came out. I'm going to read this and file it away, and then probably won't remember it, But this,
that's
like this, I remember my sister had a party when my parents went out of town. My parents, I forget where they went. And my sister threw a party and everybody's drinking and they're all college kids. And I think I'm in high school. And I had this guy from Ireland, like cornered, and I was just talking about this particular comic. Now, I don't know if he was interested, but we talked. I'm starting to think maybe he was just stoned and would have just listened to anything. I remember that conversation about that.
Yeah.
Comic.
Yeah, it's a different thing. And part of me is a little sad, like this Dylan Dog book, which again, it's a totally fine book. It's fun. I probably won't remember. In 2 months, if you ask me something that happened in it, I'll tell you the demon was in it, which is fun, and Constantine was in it. But things that happen, I will be hard pressed to.
Part of me wonders if that's just like they say as a kid, like your memory logs stuff because it doesn't have a comparison. It like you only have like 6 years worth of experience when you're 6 years old. But now when you're 46 years old, your brain like is jaded, or like, that's not important. That's, what I mean? But like getting that bowl of cereal when you were 5, that's important because, remember you were a little kid, like on Christmas morning, you were going to explode with excitement. Now literally somebody could buy you a car and you'd be like, wow, now I got to pay taxes. I wonder what my insurance is. Like, our emotions are kind of dulled. I dated a girl and she was just like, she goes, I used to be the happiest kid. She goes, and I got this doll for Christmas and I brought it to school for show and tell. And the teacher was just like, okay, next. Like, she goes, I expected everybody to be like, that's the greatest thing in the world. She was just, the kid was just like, and she was just like, and that was it. I was never happy again. She was a nut job, but I know, like, so I wonder if that has to do with it. When I was 7 years old, reading Avengers 165, oh my God, there was nothing to compare it to. It was probably one of the first 20 comics I ever read. 55 comics later, those exciting firsts, like you remember the first girl you kissed, you remember the first girl you held her hand, you remember the first car you drove,
that's true. I could totally, I see that, which is it is a little sad, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
yeah, because as creators, we're trying to recapture that. Like we're trying to like elicit the same feeling that we had when we were reading books, whenever that might be. So maybe it's I don't want to say a fool's errand, but at least we're attempting to.
yeah.
All right.
But
I do have to
really-
go.
Yeah, I gotta go
Okay.
have
All right.
See ya.
Thanks a lot, everybody. I'll talk
Brian,
to you later.
in the chat. Bye bye.